All right, joining us now to discuss the new congressional investigation into Jared Kushner's personal deals with Saudi Arabia, whether he leveraged his power while in the White House to make those deals and what Congress intends to do about it, is Democratic Congressman Krishnamoorthi of Illinois. He's a member of the House Oversight and Intelligence Committee. The Oversight Committee is investigating Kushner's $2 billion investment from the Saudis. Congressman, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Ali.
I want to quote a couple things from the letter that your committee has sent to Jared Kushner, where you've asked for documentation within the next 2 weeks. You write in the letter, the Committee on Oversight and Reform is investigating whether you have improperly traded on your government position to obtain billions of dollars from the Saudi government, and here's where it gets interesting, and whether your personal financial interests improperly influenced U.S. foreign policy during the administration of your father-in-law, former President Trump. This is the most interesting part, right? It's kind of gross if people trade on their office for personal gain, but it's probably true that people have done that in the past. The issue is whether or not Donald Trump's purported activities having to do with the Middle East through Jared Kushner were influenced by this promise or potential promise of personal enrichment.
That's right. For 6 years on your program, I've been sounding the alarm about Jared Kushner being a walking, talking conflict of interest, mainly because of his personal financial troubles, which we've described before. But I was concerned about him having access to top secret information through security clearances, then being able to manage nuclear technology export policy, especially with regard to the Saudis, and now the conduct of American foreign policy in the Middle East. And what we're really concerned about is, what did the Saudis get in return for basically making a $2 billion investment in his fund? Because as you pointed out before, the Saudi economic advisors who had reviewed Jared Kushner's investment management firm said it was, quote unquote, unsatisfactory in all respects. And so combined with the fact that MBS said that he, quote unquote, had Jared Kushner in his pocket, we have to wonder, did Jared Kushner share intelligence information with the Saudis? Did he try to influence our foreign policy so we look the other way with regard to their human rights abuses in Yemen, as well as their crackdown on dissidents in Saudi Arabia? And then finally, the brutal assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. These are all questions, and also what he may have promised with regard to future foreign policy should his father-in-law be back in the White House.
Right. This is what double complicates this, right? This might have been payback. Some have alleged for what happened under the Trump administration, despite the fact that Saudi Arabia should have been treated like a pariah for those things that you just mentioned. But there is this extra complicating factor of the fact that Donald Trump is an undeclared candidate for president in 2024. What can you do about this?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to shine a light on any kind of correspondence, information, any communications between Jared Kushner and the Saudis during the time that he was, quote unquote, conducting foreign policy with regard to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. You're right. He did not fund any kind of Abraham fund. Instead, he funded another A-lettered fund, namely the Affinity Fund, which he owns. And by the way, not only did the Saudis make a $2 billion investment in this Affinity Fund, which Jared Kushner is the sole owner of, it's going to generate $25 million in annual fee income for none other than Jared Kushner alone. And so we have to wonder, what are they getting in return for that $25 million that they're providing to him every year? And so now we also have to look at, are the Saudis helping to punish Joe Biden politically through their hiking of oil prices, their conduct of energy policy with regard to the United States, and so forth? It's a very tangled web that Jared Kushner has weaved for us.
Jared Kushner and other government officials were traveling the Middle East for a while under the auspices of developing policy, a peace plan. By the way, peace plan is supposed to be between Israel and the Palestinians. That didn't quite unfold the way it was supposed to. part of the problem here is not just that government officials might line their pockets in the course of their work, but there's an allegation put forward by the New York Times reporting that, in fact, this was meant to be something, relations and negotiations on behalf of the American people for the benefit of Middle East peace, and it was entirely something else. That's a whole different thing. Even if Jared Kushner wasn't lining his pockets, there was a misrepresentation of what Jared Kushner was doing on the public dime as an official of the administration for the last 4 years, the 4 years that Donald Trump was in office.
That's exactly right. You know, when we have our top foreign policy officials and diplomats, and for that matter, even members of the intelligence community conducting business on behalf of the United States, it's done for the best interests of the American people. In this particular case, it may have been done not for the best interests of the American people, but for the best interests of Jared Kushner's pocketbook and potentially his father-in-law, by the way, which we still don't quite understand the connection between him and his father-in-law's finances. And so this is just a horrible kind of perversion of foreign policy with regard to Saudi Arabia, and we need to shine a light on it. And then we need to probably strengthen the laws surrounding ethics and transparency of the finances of our foreign policy officials and others with regard to their conduct of policy while they're in office in connection with their own personal finances.
Congressman, good to see you this morning. Thank you for taking time to join us. Democratic Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi of